special and like important part of my mind and my heart. And we did have such an incredible time making these movies together. Something that means so much to you, that means so much to audiences, but that also has been just a very joyful experience of making these films with this sort of family.
But I have to say, by 2015, when it was all said and done, it had been a lot of work and I was a little burnt out. And, it was, I want to say, about 5 years later, after I had done another movie and done a television.
Ideas of this and the exploration of how a boy makes games.
As fun as those may be, I think we kind of know just from the books and even a little bit from the movies what their stories were. So you already have a hint. And so I think what she did was much more interesting because we didn't really know the background of Snow. And what also just really excited me too is that Suzanne, and I think this is why the first books were so popular, really writes based off an idea. She has an idea and an idea for theme and themes that feel and are relevant for our times. And one of the things, and I think the most important thing, if you were to talk to Suzanne, that she was thinking about when writing this book is the sort of state of nature debate, right? The kind of Hobbesian view of human beings are sort of brutal and savage by nature.
That the games are a reflection of really our true nature, which is eat or be eaten, and that anybody ultimately will do anything they need to do in order to survive. And that's who we are, and therefore we need a government that controls and contains us, and that the state has to be more powerful to control its population.
Versus Locke, who feels like we as humans have these inalienable rights and should be free, and maybe even like Rousseau, the sort of romantics, who really all you need is art, love, and nature. Gaul is basically a figure in this movie who represents the Hobbesian view of the world and is grooming Snow and sees the potential in Snow to sort of follow along with those philosophies.
Sejanus, believes that the government's role is to protect the rights of its citizens. He makes his impassioned plea that the citizens of the capital and citizens of the districts are no different. They're all human beings who are fundamentally entitled to a government that protects and serves their rights.
And it's this kind of battle that she was seeing that was sort of not only polarizing the nation, but polarizing the world.
Whether we are fundamentally good or bad, or somewhere in between, really shape the government that you think you need or want or deserve, or in the case of Snow, ought to be in charge of.
And that's kind of what this story is all about. So one of the reasons that I was so excited was it all felt like a fresh slate, right? Because, having started with Catching Fire, the reason that I did it was I felt like there were enough new characters to cast. There was enough new world, including the arena, but also new parts of the capital that haven't been seen. It was enough for me to sort of build, even though I was inheriting some things. But this one was completely from scratch, meaning we're seeing a city in a world that's 65 years earlier. It's right after a war, so it's, let's say, kind of a reconstructive era. Wardrobe would feel different, language might feel a little different. Obviously, all the characters in the cast are completely new. So that was just extremely exciting.
Suzanne builds a world that is more than just a young adult fiction world. It's one that is, tackles a bunch of real world issues within the kind of entertainment of YA novels. And obviously, I was already a fan of the first 4 movies. Coriolanus is just such a complex character, and seeing him go from...
I could buy the Academy a brand new gym just so I could get my diploma. Tom's a very intellectual person, a very intellectual actor, and he's a really fun person to have a conversation with about where intention comes from. And, it's sort of the more technical aspects about acting, where you have a scene and then you talk about intention and objective and what does this mean? Why do you say this? Why do you choose to say this sentence? It's a lot of fun to act with Tom because it might end up in a completely different place than you expected. And Tom loves to try different things. He loves it when you try different things, and those are wonderful people.
Rachel, it's sort of a funny story. I almost knew immediately that I wanted Rachel to be in it. And I happened to be in London doing the score for my previous film, and she had just gotten to London because she was doing Snow White for Disney.
But I had just moved there from New York, and I was very lonely and very sad. And sat down with Frances and we talked for 4 hours about the book, about the other movies, about this movie, and the approach to the character. I had such a fantastic conversation with him.
But I remember, maybe 3 hours and 45 minutes into this meeting, I asked, is there anything else that I can answer for you? And she says, yeah, when does it shoot and where does it shoot?
And he said, well, we're filming in Poland and in Germany, and we would start filming right before you finish the film we're working on right now.
And she went ghost white. And what I realized was we were basically starting 3 days after Snow White ended.
I said, I don't think I can do that. It's so far away. I miss my family, I miss my significant other, I miss my friends, and I don't think I can spend an entire 12 months out of the country. I just don't think I can do it.
And the weirdest thing happened, and this is like a strange kind of combo. We were on the hunt for Sejanus, and we were looking at all these Sejanuses, and nobody was right. And what we realized from the reads is that we actually had the kind of character wrong in the script. So we actually paused on casting Sejanus, rewrote the character all the way through, restarted the process, and then we got Josh as one of the first people. Josh Rivera came in and read the new version of Sejanus, and he was like, he's amazing. So I'm in Berlin, I'm looking at this thing going like, this is definitely Sejanus, he's the one. And Haiti, who's my assistant and second unit director, looked over my shoulder and said, that's Rachel's boyfriend. And I was like, no way.
After we cast Josh, I think she started to have, second thoughts. She had really wanted to do it. She'd loved it, but didn't feel like she could just go straight into another show.
So we cast Josh purely because he was the best. But I knew that once we started casting, and now she was probably a few weeks away, maybe a month away from finishing, so she was gonna see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? I was like, I wonder if we're gonna get a call.
Lucy Graybear.
The movie I had slated to do got pushed to the next year, and I had kind of caught my second wind for being away from home. And I called my agent and said, do you think they'd still be interested in me over at Hunger Games?
Of course, the job is still open, so I have a long talk with her now really about the character, things that I've learned, especially from reading different people, about the songs, all this kind of stuff. And we decide we want to do a chemistry test, even though Zoom, with her and Tom.
Frances told her, just start the audition by just singing to Tom.
I asked her to sing one of my favorite songs kind of that era, called Wildwood Flower, that was made famous by the Carter family, to do like a kind of slow, romantic a cappella version of it, sing that to him, do that first.
And I sat there and, Zoom doesn't really give you much emotional feedback, but I sat there and I ended up crying just watching her sing, because she has this kind of incredible life in her when she sings, which I've really not seen in many other actors before.
Are you coming to the tree where a necklace of rope side by side with me? Oh, strange things did happen here. No stranger would it be if we met up at midnight in the hanging tree.
I mean, if you can feel that through a Zoom screen, you're definitely going to feel it through an IMAX screen. And then getting to know Rachel has been kind of like one of the joys of my life. We've become really good friends. And yeah, it's very easy to fall in love with Rachel. She's very charming. She brings a lot of kind of raw, fiery energy to what she does, which is exactly what Lucy Gray needs.
And I got the part that night. They sent my tape to Lionsgate and to Suzanne Collins, and they both signed off, and I got cast. But I originally said no.
How tantalizing to see all your shining young faces on this auspicious day. As the more enlightened of you may have guessed, I am Dr. Volumnia Gall, your humble head game maker in charge of the War Department and all its affiliated concerns.
Viola was always Frances and my first choice. I think he mentioned her early on, and I was like, yeah, that's it.
I love Viola Davis. I love her work. I think she's one of the best actors, living now, if not one of the best actors of all time.
He knew Viola, and before she read the script, when we were sending it to her, Frances reached out and was like, this character, she's on the wacky side. You know, she is a great villain, but she's also quite eccentric, a little bit nuts. And, you know, did she want to play a character that was like this sort of out of the box character that has a really sick, dark sense of humor? And she loved the prospect of that.
You know, the only stipulation about the casting of Viola kind of came from Suzanne, which was just that Suzanne had always imagined Gall being much older than Viola is. So we aged her with the makeup and wigs and things like that.
I was incredibly intimidated to meet Viola.
Zilla Secret, unless you can put a leash on your deluded classmate, she might as well be dead as far as you're concerned.
I've been watching her for years, and I've been a big fan of her for years.
Breadcrumbs.
We went to the same drama school, so I was also intimidated knowing that she's had the same training that I have, but probably when it was a lot tougher. And so I knew she'd have a thick skin and more tools than I could ever hope to dream of in her toolkit. But she turned up on set, and she's incredibly gracious, and she's got so much gravitas, but she's generous in the way she works. She brings this kind of explorative nature to her work, which Gall needs, because Gall is like this. I remember Viola and Francis describing Dr. Gall as like a Willy Wonka.
And the original Gene Wilder Willy Wonka, which is, there's a sort of a sinister quality that's kind of underneath, but really it's a person who finds joy in the creative ways she's coming up with things. So even if they're horrible things for sort of torture or death or punishment, it's the creative side of it that she finds fun.
And so what Viola has brought to it is this kind of constant playfulness and experimenting, and the way she works, she's always trying something, and then if that doesn't work, she tries something else, and it just feels like she's got this big toolkit that she's just pulling things out of. And as an actor playing with her, you're just kind of like dodging what she throws and then throwing things back, and vice versa, and it just feels so rich at all times.
All of the young actors, you know, worshipped her.
I remember our very first scene together. She walks into the room and 200 heads just turn.
Everyone shuts up. Instantly. I've never seen anything like it. Dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. It was just bonkers. And then she stands up and gives this deliciously unhinged performance that I don't think any of us saw coming.
I just remember her like coming up on this podium and looking at everybody.
And the first thing you hear is this sort of kind of terrifying giggle.
How tantalizing. It was just like, I remember it like shaking me like in my chair, like I didn't know what to do.
I start tearing up. Like, thank God the coverage was on her. Everyone starts tearing up.
My eyes started to well up because I was like, this is the person I've been watching, and I'm in the same room with her. Watching how slow and intentional she is, and how she attacks every single line and word.
Her voice is just amazing. And when she speaks, you're just like, wow. Everything she says, it's just like, yeah, that's how it's meant to be said.
It was so polished and like unnerving and scary and like exciting.
It's been honestly one of the best workshops that I could ever, you know, attend. It's unbelievable.
It's the same with Peter, the first day we worked with him. You know, these are some of the greatest actors alive.
I am now honored to introduce to you the creator of the Hunger Games themselves, Dean Casca Highbottom.
Peter's great. He and I had met about a movie I had done in 2010, and he ended up not wanting to do it because he didn't feel like there was quite enough meat on the bone for him, which I totally agree. There was not. And this one, certainly there's a lot of meat. There's like, you know, there's a real character arc and a lot of reveals and great dialogue, and there was just plenty for him to do. He's just fantastic. I mean, it's like I'd been a fan of his for a long, long time, and then, you know, obviously being a fan of Game of Thrones and what he was able to do with that character. And so to have him on set, I mean, everybody was just sort of enjoying every moment of him.
Peter Dinklage is genuinely one of the best actors I have ever met and had the privilege of working with.
Proud, I see. Like your father.
He is always finding something fresh. We could have done 70 takes, and every single take feels like he's just found something new, which, as an actor, playing against him or opposite him, you can't ask for anything better than that. That is like absolute gold when every time, you know, it's 70 takes in and he comes in with like a left turn, a right turn, a right hook, a left hook, and he does it with a smile as well. So it's, you know, it's always kind of, you never know what you're gonna get. And he just loves it. He loves the craft of acting, and so you go into a scene with him and you can't help but love it too.
I would be more concerned with your own survival if I were you. It's fitting that both your parents could be here for your big moment. That compact.
Very, very addictive, and I wish I could act with him on everything I ever do.
Your little excursion is in violation of about 5 Academy rules, Mr. Snow. Chief amongst them endangering a capital student.
To see how much he can do with so little, just in his eyes, or just like a little gesture, and that it communicates so much. To see him in this role, it's very easy for an actor to get maudlin. He's a drug addict. He's clearly sort of tortured. You don't exactly know why until you put it all together in the end. It's easy to want to hate the person because he is an antagonist, and yet you're really curious about, like, well, why does he not like him so much? What is it between them? There's an excitement about seeing Peter Dinklage that's really different than seeing any other actor, because people just love and respect and admire him so much.
Chins down, but don't get lost behind those screens. And smile. That's why we have teeth.
When we were coming up with who could we cast for Lucky Flickerman, who is an ancestor of Caesar Flickerman, the Stanley Tucci character from the other movies, and who's a really fun character in the book, Lucky is. Very, very early on, Jason was sort of pitched to me, and I was like really into that idea. I'm just a huge fan of his.
It's this bizarre thing to be able to become a part of something that sort of already exists in people's minds, and there's a world that you can envision and see, and even though this is a prequel and it's a different look and takes place in a different time period, it's just kind of crazy to be able to join something that you've already been a fan of and already been watching, and to kind of picture yourself in the world. It's very bizarre, and it's really fun to watch them shoot it too, as a fan.
In the script, the character Lucky Flickerman, in my opinion, is very, very, very underwritten. And I said, I think there's just a ton of opportunity in any scene you're in to have much more stuff.
Happy Hunger Games, and remember, when your tribute dies, you're out, all right? You know, he's like, there's places in the script where we cut to him, but who knows exactly what the space will be like in those exact moments, and so myself and Mike Leslie, who wrote this, got together, and we were just coming up with yarns and yards of lines and kooky things.
So we have tons of other options for things within scenes.
Our apologies, by the way, for saying the word lover on television. This is going out publicly, you know. We can't say that.
Something about Jason is that he does something new every take with what he says and like the jokes that he makes, and it has us all in stitches every single time. It's always fresh, it's always new, it's always within the character and the confines of the time period that we're in and the situation that we're in. His behavior doesn't ever give in to the fact that it might be a sad, tragic thing, which makes his character so funny and gives that spark of joy that films like this that have very dark situations, like, we need that a little bit, and so it's very lifting.
Really fun process. And in shooting, we would actually shoot out almost all the scenes in the auditorium during the middle of the games. We'd usually shoot out, you know, sort of all the characters watching the games, and, you know, Snow and Sejanus and whoever, and anything, and then we would kind of finish our day with 2 or 3 hours left and just shoot Jason. It would just be versions of Jason doing and trying different things and riffing, and it was fun because he's also, you know, he really is, for the most part, the kind of comedy in the movie. He's brings the levity and a little bit of the relief to the movie, and so you want to make sure you get some of that.
The creator of the Hunger Games, Dean Highbottom. Dean, thank you for all that you do and all that you've done. Is the after party still at your place? It was really fun. Like, I just hope that it was we did an all right job for him.
Are you okay? What happened?
What I love about Hunter is that I find her so wildly endearing, and something so sort of good and honorable and kind of pure about her. And what was great too, and just having different people read, and a lot of people read for the part, is, you know, they were doing this kind of capital affect, and you just could kind of feel this sort of phoniness of trying to be capital. And Hunter kind of came in, and I think she comes from a much more sort of naturalistic school of acting, and she had this kind of really endearing, slightly awkward kind of quality that I really fell in love with, that I thought worked well for the Capitol, worked well for Tigress, worked well for the relationship with Tigress and Snow.
I was curious because my only reference for her was from the previous books, what she looked like in this world, and it was really different. So in a way, I kind of felt like I had some more creative control and like liberty in a way, because you know, this Tigress hadn't been established in the same way that the previous Tigress, and it's still somewhat unclear because we don't exactly know what happens between this story and then. So that was like kind of exciting and encouraging versus like having to fill the character up to like what it's supposed to be set in stone, you know?
You know, she's also, I just think, stunning to look at. So the idea of this woman that's so tall and is into fashion and into style, and who's going to become, you know, this character in the earlier movies 65 years later, you know, you could sort of see how that progression, you know, could happen.
She plays Tigress with this kind of, this lightness and this savviness at the same time, which shouldn't really work, but it does. I don't think she knows it, but she's kind of a genius. She is so fresh every time. Every take is just the kind of like raw, like interior energy just kind of bubbling out. And so you'll be sat opposite her in a scene and she'll just like, you know, it's so natural at all times, and so light and buoyant, and it's beautiful. It's been very easy to kind of play cousins and people who know each other intimately because she's just like an open book, and she's a beautiful actor.
Snow.
Sir?
Received the results of your aptitude test this morning. I'm pretty familiar with the director Francis's work. He's a man of great vision and is very calm and kind and specific, so I was very, very happy to be working with him and the team. Obviously this is a huge production, and I know how many fans out there are sort of waiting for anything to do with the Hunger Games, so this is really exciting to be in a prequel. I'm working in the last week of production in Berlin, and people are still smiling at each other, which is always a good sign. It's a really good bunch of people, and I'm very happy to be involved.
Young kids with Knox and Luna and Sophia and Cooper, and then you have like, you know, our vets, Dimitri and Nick and Mackenzie, Kiel, everybody. I could sit here for hours and talk about how great they are. They're just such salt of the earth individuals, and so happy to be there doing what they're doing and so committed to it.
So we're in Cologne right now in Germany, and we are filming the carriage scene, so when we all get off the trains.
The tributes were in the train for days to travel to the arena, and they're very tired and angry, but still some of them are ready to fight.
This is actually, for my character, this is where he first gets bit by the bats and where he gets rabies. So this is the beginning of the end for Jessup.
When we get to the Capitol, they just throw us in a zoo where we're just shackled together in district pairs, and then from there it's directly to the arena. So it's not like fancy like in the...
There's no buffet, we haven't been fed in like 3 days, haven't been fed since the reaping, we haven't been fed.
And we don't get trained and stuff.
It's very different to the later, the 75th, I think, Hunger Games, where you get sort of enter celebrity status and all of that. No, we just get put in a zoo.
It's funny because like, we all have to kill each other, but we also get along like so well. So it's kind of hard to switch to back and forth. But yeah, I mean, all the other tributes, like they're all super talented actors and just like great to work in the fun time. So, you know, it's just always good time on set with everyone.
You can talk to everyone, and no matter how mean the character is, the actors are super nice. So what's your requested item?
Oh, we were just saying to the lovely viewers at home, we had requested... we requested a fun hat to make friends.
I guess we're all family now, really. We've been together for so long. When you're on a job like this, there's not really anyone else to be with than the rest of the cast, so we've all become really close and we all get along really well.
Because they're just such a fun group of individuals, and they're just the most talented people for the roles as well, which is such a win-win-win for everybody.
Okay.
Everyone's born as clean as a whistle, as fresh as a daisy, and not a bit crazy. Staying that way, it's a hard road for hoping.
Very early, I remember being in my backyard and speaking with Suzanne Collins, and when we were talking about the book Ballad, and it was in that call that she actually said that there's a huge musical element to the story. And so then when I read it, I sort of saw what she was talking about. Because Lucy Gray's a performer, she's performing songs quite a lot through the story.
So you're kind of thinking, well, what's that going to be like? But, you know, her lyrics are incredible, and her knowledge of country music and the roots of country music, early Appalachian, bluegrass, folk, country style music.
You're as pure as the driven snow.
Suzanne is this big country music aficionado, especially the kind of music that sort of comes from the old ballads from Scotland and England and Ireland. And so we hired a great music producer and songwriter, Dave Cobb, and he and Suzanne had long talks about like the history and the sort of references for each of the songs that she had written.
Suzanne Collins has been probably the most brilliant person I've ever talked to in my life. Just an absolute hero. When I talk to her, she puts me in this world. She tells me, you know, kind of every single detail and the feel and the sound and the inspiration for the songs. So it's going to be fun to take all this history of maybe British Isles music and Southern music and mash it all together in this dystopian way in this future, and kind of keep it raw and rugged, and it just sounds like a fun thing to do, to kind of find a sound that isn't a sound that's been had before, you know?
We're going to start with Pure as Driven Snow as the first song.
In this case, it's kind of finding the sound of Lucy Gray and the Covey. It's finding their sound. And so it's casting the right players. I'm having this incredible group of people come down and play on it. There's a girl, Molly Tuttle, who I'm a big fan of, and she's one of the best guitar players in the world. So she's coming down, and she's going to be the sound of Lucy Gray's instrument.
Okay, you got Molly Tuttle playing guitar, Dominic is playing mandolin, Brian Allen is playing bass, Cassandra Lewis is singing, and Carmela Ramsey is playing fiddle.
The artist that he works with and assembled for these sessions, the music he composed, the way that it really fits Suzanne's lyrics, every song, as we would hear the demos, they stay with you. They're so specific. There's not any two songs that you mix up with the other.
I want to influence how it's going to feel later by providing the right voices, and I'm just using my imagination of people I think are great, kind of come in there and put it all in one pot and stir it and see what we come out on the other end with, you know.
We're going to dig into, I just wanted to call, make sure you met everybody and kind of give a synopsis of everything. What we'll do is I'm going to run through it with everyone and start learning the song. When I feel like we got it in a good place, I'm going to, chime back in with you. So let's start from the top.
All right.
I'll start with one.
He wrote these great songs and got a great group of musicians together and recorded in Savannah, Georgia in a house, and the songs are just fantastic.
So that right there, let's hold that. It's like, you could make me so down to my heart.
And Francis loves music. He has such a good grasp on what he's looking for as well. So as we're doing this music, we're going to be all completely interactive. It's going to be Suzanne and Francis and I going back and forth and really discovering the sound together. So they're going to play a huge vital part in every piece of the puzzle with connecting Lucy Gray to film.
Hey, everybody, this is Francis, director of the film. Can you hear us? You digging it? We're just starting to work it out. We're going to run it, one or two more times and try to cut one. But I'd love for your feedback. I'll run it right now for you.
And we'll play it and we'll voice the character for his imagination, Suzanne's imagination. I feel like I've tried to cast the best people I can and best players who are just at the top of their game to all step up and become Lucy Gray, and the Covey as well.
So did all that, and then when we cast Rachel, played her all that music, then did some pre-records, which were almost more sort of rehearsals for her.
1, 2, 3.
When I was a babe, I fell down in a heart. When I was a girl, I fell into your arms. We fell on hard times and we lost our bright colors. You went to the dogs and I lived by my charms.
It was one of the most interesting things when I was reading the book, is I was like, how are they going to make this music work in the context of a film version, because I've worked on many musicals, and when I got all of the scratch recordings for the music, I just fell in love and was like, we got this part right for sure.
It's sooner than later that I'm 6 feet under. It's sooner than later that you'll be alone. So who will you turn to tomorrow, I wonder?
The reputation of the family is like his major concern. So in a way, I thought this apartment has to be important or good enough for somebody to become a monster, to become a dictator. I mean, like to rule the world is you do that because you're afraid of losing this home, which is, of course, is totally out of proportion, right? And of course, it needed to be kind of representing also his father, who was not a nice person, obviously. So to took like the evil spirit of this military-based father into that was also an important part. And then we were playing with some thoughts, and of course we ended up saying, okay, if Snow is the family name and a snowflake has a very specific shape, let's try to play with that. And then we designed the whole floor plan of the apartment like a snowflake, which doesn't make any sense in terms of architecture. And of course it's, you have to change it a bit, but truly the shape of the floor plan resembles a snowflake, which means that you have a central room and everything is leading like a star from the middle, which is also a kind of very uncomfortable shape for a place to live in, because it doesn't really work. So to enter the stage and to enter the apartment makes everybody immediately uncomfortable because it doesn't work. It's not a room to live in, it's just a room to show off.
It was nice to have this range of, actors that have done many, many, many productions and have incorporated every type of prosthetic hair and makeup costume into other characters that they've done, and then having actors that were, very stripped down into what they needed to be and how they needed to look for their character and being their first time. So we definitely had the whole scale of every type of actor and every type of costume in the film.
She did a great job, and I will say also, Trish did a great job, but also the hair makeup team in terms of like the hairstyles for all of that and the makeup for all of that. It was just really well done, really great group of people.
There's definitely key departments that I work really, really closely with, and that we have to share a lot of information so we can tell this complete story. And it all makes sense, and it's a nice flow together. And definitely hair and makeup are people I try and work with very early on. I, am fortunate that I get much more prep time than they do, so by the time they come in, there are illustrations that I would have done because it's hard to illustrate without, the head and the full look. So I try and be very respectful and have as much dialogue as I can with them. And so with Nikki coming in, we knew she had to do, she has the huge challenge of wigs.
Trish was such an integral part of the whole design for hair, and having done one before, having done another Hunger Games, so she had that kind of intel, I suppose, with Frances, and the way it was going to look. You know, I really love working closely with costume designers because they usually start before hair and makeup. So they have a bit of a handle on, you know, how characters are developing, and so, you know, hopefully give hair and makeup a lot more kind of influence that way. And then obviously with the director conversations and you know, collaborating with Sherry as well was a big part of it.
Francis talked to us early on about, you know, the look of the film, and he wanted it to be really gritty and dark and dirty. And then there's just so many different types of characters on this film too, that we were doing period with a twist, and we were doing, you know, people that have been in a truck in mud for, you know, we'd be living in that world for a week and then switch over to like the academy and the lakeside. And so there were so many different avenues that we could really be creative on this film, and the Hob and the coal miners, and there were a lot of areas where we could push the envelope, and it was fun.
I can't say enough nice things and honest things and creative things about Yo, because he is very conscious of what other departments deal with, and he's very conscious about where he needs to include you in conversations about how he's going to light things. And we had a lot of conversations, especially about the interior of the games, because it's such a big space, and seeing how it was going to be lit. And that also plays into a lot of, like, besides with the coloring and fabrication of the costumes and the textures of the costumes, it also depends on our aging and how we're going to age things and do patina finishes on things. And also when there is going to be slight blood on the clothing, like, so that it can, with the lighting, it does look like the proper color that it's supposed to be. We have parameters of what our blood color can be in PG-13 films, so we want to take that into consideration. But I do go to Yo often about showing him colors. I send him swatches, especially if it's something in a white I want to use. There was a fabric that I wanted to have for Dr. Gall's character, and I didn't know how badly it would moire on camera. So it was something like that. I sent, we actually did a camera test. I sent it over and had Yo test it, and he was like, yeah, it's a really cool fabric, but you absolutely can't use it.
Look at you. Your makeshift shirt and your too tight shoes, trying desperately to fit in when I know the snows don't have a pot to piss in.
Tom's very dark-haired, so we needed to make him lighter.
Tom's head is shaved from the very beginning. So his head is shaved before we start shooting, and his hair is bleached out. And then you have to put a wig on that because he has to wear the wig for all the academy stuff and the beginning part of the film. And it's only later in the film where he has his actually real hair and his shaved head. So Nikki had a lot of challenges to deal with. I mean, there's several wigs in the film, and it's nice when you can't tell that they're wigs, and that's a huge accomplishment, you know?
That head shaving on camera. We made this partial bowl cap with punched hair inside that we shave on camera. It was a bit stressing, but it was also lovely to do, of course.
Trish Somerville was one of the first people I met of the whole cast and crew in LA. We did a fitting, and from the jump, she was so invested in the visual storytelling, which I love about her. She's costume and design and everything, but she's a storyteller. That's first and foremost, that's what she's good at. And I love that, because what an actor wants to do is tell a story. And so when you've got a designer who really cares about what is the story we're telling here and how do we make that represented visually, that's exactly what Trish does. That first meeting, we tried on some of the costumes. We tried on the Peacekeeper outfit, and we tried on the school uniform, the academy uniform. And I remember just seeing like the vast difference between the academy uniform, which is, you know, this bright rouge, they call it Academy Rouge, and it's also it's like kind of contemporary because she's bringing kilts into it, which is kind of a very contemporary, you know, unisex clothing thing, which I love, but then she's also made it kind of boxy and quite authoritarian and utilitarian, and she's kind of meshed these two worlds in this way that feels very unique and original, very dystopian.
And with the school uniforms, I really wanted them to be one uniform for everyone to wear. We didn't get the difference of you could pick a skirt or pants or shorts, whatever, a sweater. No, I wanted it to be everyone the same, because I feel the Capitol always lets you understand that you're one of a million. There's not really anything special about you, that you're just a sea of people.
And then we tried on the the uniform for the peacekeepers in District 12, and it reminded me of like the stormtroopers. It reminded me of like a really oppressive force. I remember in that moment thinking, oh, she gets the story. And I was like halfway through the book at that point, and so I was there with Trish trying on these costumes, while also like the book was in my bag and I was halfway through it, and it was this surreal moment where I was like, oh, we're making that thing, that book that's in my bag. We're here making it right now, and that was a real kind of icebreaker moment for me.
And then in the end, different districts, but they get contained in District 12. And so I wanted it to be this kind of, everything is slightly worn, there's a lot of handwork on them, a lot of embroidery, and I wanted to have this folksy kind of feel to it to show some heritage. Because I think in District 12 and with the Lucy Gray character, there is this closeness about her lineage and her family and what it means to have a sense of community. And it's so completely different than what the Capitol is. So, well, you know, it was a lot of like, definitely a lot of aging and patining on her costumes. And we had an amazing team in Berlin that I'm really, really grateful for, that did just such beautiful jobs of dyeing and patining and so much handwork that you do see and don't see. And our cutter fitters were just really incredible, that if they had any extra time, you know, they would come back and say, oh, I can add a few more beads, or I can add a few more flowers, I'll hand stitch it. So I was really grateful to them. And it really shines in Lucy's clothing and in the covey of what you see. And I felt it just lends itself to that type of character, where it would be something that they're very prideful about. So yeah, her costumes were really fun to do.
Lucy, she has quite a few looks on this, weirdly enough. And we started with the games, so we had a lot of, you know, it was just her dirty and sweaty the whole time. And then, you know, once we moved on to the lake scenes and stuff like that, we did a little more natural look and less dirt and a youthful look. But we also got to do some really fun looks for the Hob. She had 2 different performance looks, and then the Reaping Day, too. Most of the people in District 12 were always really dirty and covered in coal, and so, except for on the Reaping Day, it was as if they cleaned themselves up. And for me, I looked at Lucy like that was almost her performance. She knew what she was doing. So I gave her more of a look that day.
I've broken free of my laboratory today to examine you, the leaders of the next generation.
The preparation time to get into the look of Dr. Gall is major, and it's taking a lot of times. And every department, we have 4 different departments. So we start with prosthetics, then she's going to makeup, then she's in hair, and then she's in costume. So all in all, we're speaking of a long preparation time before we go on set where we shoot, and then we have also to get Viola back.
So one of her contacts is an ice blue that I created with Jessica Nelson in Los Angeles, and Sergio, who is Viola's makeup artist, created the eye shape and the lip on her, and I think obviously that was amazing.
We needed her to look slightly older, so we added the grey to her hair and we gave her some 40s style shapes. And then there was an image of a woman with this amazing fro and beautiful colours and everything, and with some grey and, you know, a silver streak in her hair. And it just suits Viola so well. With the costumes and everything, it's such a great balance of this massive hair and then these fabulous costumes. And yeah, so that was really exciting. And also it was really difficult to source that hair as well, so that was a real challenge for my wig maker in London.
With Dr. Gall, one of the things Francis brought out to me early on was he said she has this Willy Wonka essence to her. So for me, it was taking that into consideration, and also my wanting her to be, you know, a character in the film that is a little bit more fashion forward and advanced than, say, the rest of the people in the Capitol, just because of she's this mad scientist. And so for her character, it was really important to have color and a lot of texture and patterns, a lot of kind of very progressive textiles and fabrications that we used. And with her red lab coat, it was another thing where I wanted her to be a little bit off-putting. So, you know, with the ombre and dégradé that we did on the coat, it kind of leans itself into like blood that's draining. And then adding the red latex gloves just gives her another little level of being off-putting, because she does have this really, her character is this really jovial side to her and this childlike side. So it's this nice juxtaposition of this childlike innocent quality to her, but then there's this really, really dark evil side to her. And so I wanted to translate that into a lot of the shapes and the silhouettes in her clothes, and trying to make her look older. We wanted Viola to look older than what she is.
There is a lot going on character-wise, so I wouldn't call it only a character or aging prosthetic makeup. It's a character makeup, and we have covered her cheeks, we have covered her nose, we gave her a new nose, and she's having an aging on the frown line. And to make a nose in terms of character, I think every woman on this planet should get a new nose one day. I really think it's a major change, because the change we've done, it's a slight we made it a little bit more like an animal, so it is the tip of the nose is coming a little bit further down, and from the front you can't see it, it's really, you feel it. And it's to this icy, striking look of her, it's giving a lot of character. Combined with the contact lens, they are major different colors, so it's like a slight bluish, whitish, husky-like, vibrant color, and her eye, which is dark brown.
And then you do see her just kind of transform, and she gets this really mischievous little grin and kind of taps her hands together, and it was just instantly there was Dr. Gall. So that, I think, for myself, and I'm sure most costume designers, that's the biggest satisfaction you can get, is this, watching this transformation happen in the fitting, and watching actors come to life and become that character. And when they're happy, it makes my life so much easier.
Towards the end of the shoot, somebody came up to me and said, Viola wants to speak to you. I was like, uh-oh, I wonder if there's something wrong. And all she really wanted to know was, could she keep that wig? Of course we let her keep the wig. I loved that she loved the wig enough to want to keep it.
That I wanted to be the most Capitol-like. So there's a designer that I love, the period designer Lily Ann, and she made beautiful women's suiting that would be very extreme shapes. So it was very classic 40s and 50s, but it was very exaggerated. Like, she did peplums, very narrow skirts, and severe shoulders. So that was a designer I leaned into quite a bit for a couple of Tigress's costumes. I wanted her to be the softness also, so that's why with her color palette, it's a lot of pinks and roses and purples and lavenders.
Hunter actually came in for the first time when I met her, and she had plucked her eyebrows into a very angular shape that she wanted to do for her character, and it actually really worked.
We bleached my eyebrows, and I feel like that sort of helps kind of, I don't know, like change my face a little bit as far as like how, I don't know, there's something kind of like slightly sickly about it that I think suggests that she might be malnourished to some degree, but then also is able to cover that up or work with it and still like have fun with her makeup in a way, and tie in the vivid like jewel tones that she's dressed in into her face, and still adorn herself in that way.
I just thought it all kind of went together. So I love when actors come in with ideas and you can build upon them.
There was one costume for her that are these really beautiful fuchsia palazzo pants and this really strong shoulder blouse with full chiffon sleeves, and it's in a hospital scene. And I kept teasing Francis because you don't really know when you're building the costumes what the setup is going to be like. You know what the scene is from the script, but you don't know how it's going to be shot so early on. And so when I saw how we were shooting it, I went to Francis and I said, doesn't Tigress just walk into this scene? Because I wanted to see, selfishly, I wanted to see her head to toe, And he said, no, she's sitting. And I'm like, are you sure she's sitting? Maybe she walks into the hospital. She just came to life in everything that we put on her. So she was just a joy to dress, really a joy to dress. What I love about filmmaking is I love being part of a creative team. I love working with the production designer and the DP and the director and the props people and hair and makeup. I love that we all get together and are able to tell this story. And, shooting in Berlin was a really incredible experience, and being able to shoot in Poland was a really incredible experience. And you learn so many things each job that you do, and I met really incredible people along the way. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
And action.
Typically in our productions, when we make these things, we wrap up to the pieces. Because of our location, we had to start with the pieces. So day one was opening battle pieces, which was just full on. All the actors had to be up to speed. Everybody had to be up to speed. So it was a bit of a gun at the gate, like here we go, into the deep end right off the top. So there wasn't any ramping up to it.
And 3, 2, 1, action.
I think because of the effort that all our cast put into the training side of it, it went off smooth. There was no issues at all. It was really good. It's not a big stunt film per se. Like, we're not throwing people out of buildings and blowing up stuff and all that, but it was definitely a very, very actor action oriented kind of thing. And I just can't say it enough times. Those kids are fantastic.
Scott I started to work with, and I really love him and his team. I started to work with him on C. He's, Vancouver-based stunt coordinator, really smart guy, recommended to me by Chivo Emmanuel Lubezki because he had worked on The Revenant. And so I contacted him, and he and his team did amazing work on C. And so some of the battle sequences and the fight sequences on that were just insane.
Okay, going up.
And we brought him out here. But we used the same sort of methodologies, which is that I started to talk to him about where tributes are, where tributes need to be, which tributes need to die, which tributes need to survive, where they need to end up, how some may fight, how some may run. So he had to start to, you have to wrap your head around, when you have almost 24 people, like who's going where and who's got to die and all that kind of stuff. But then what tools can they use? What are the tools that sort of are put there that are representative of the different districts that each of the tributes are from? How can they be used by the tributes, you know what I mean? And so there was like a fair amount of development.
Time on a rehearsal stage to play with it and throw ideas up. And I have a very good idea where Francis wanted to go with this show. So when I'm on my rehearsal stage with my team, I can try a couple things and I can go, hey, that works, let's try it this way this time. What if you guys are transposed? Let's see where that goes and try this. And what if it goes under the turnstiles instead of over? We try all these things on the stage, and each one of them works and it doesn't. There's always some hindrance, and then we realize that it's probably better to go over top of the turnstiles and take it from there. So it all came down to rehearsal time. You have to rehearse. When you rehearse, spend your money on the rehearsals. When you're on your shooting days, they'll be shorter days. On our rehearsal stage, I put together 24 stunt people, and we'll call them proxies because we hadn't even had cast at that point. And with our proxies, we put together this fight sequence, which is all about timing. When you're here, you're here, you're here, and 24 people have to do something at that metronome beat of number 13 or number 14, number 15, to make sure that you've gone from there to over here to interact with this person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we put it all together and Francis okayed it, now when our cast started showing up, we started transposing. We take one of our proxies out and we teach a cast member what it was. So now we got 23 stunt people in one cast, and then we got 22 and 2 cast members, et cetera, et cetera. And we slowly integrated our cast members into what our proxy fight that we put together.
When you go down to the ground from that upswing, when you're crawling, you can have a look for Pamela so you know where he is.
Yeah,
That'll,
because I'm not crawling anymore. I haven't crawled in many a take.
Whatever happens.
I've been standing up because I can't crawl in these. Can't do much in these.
You want to put on some runners?
No, it's okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
These are helpful, just not to crawl.
Not to crawl. Okay, cool.
So I've been standing
When you
up.
scramble.
Yeah, I've been standing up, scrambling.
You scramble toward Pamela. You can look to him and see where he is.
Yeah.
But as soon as you line them up, turn around and clock off.
Yeah.
Then when we had that down, then he'd bring all the actors in, and then he'd videotape the actors, and then I'd come in and talk the actors through everything. So by the time we were actually in the arena, it was really well rehearsed, and we sort of knew exactly how it was going to be shot and what everybody was going to be doing and what the timing was like. And I find that to be just a really efficient way to be as creative as possible and have the time to kind of develop the ideas within the sequences and then be ready when you need to shoot it.
And 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
That was my first day on set, was the countdown into the Hunger Games and running in. It's called the Bloodbath, which was really great. And I mean, the first thing I had to do was just scream bloody murder for Jessup to try to find him, and then dodge everybody else, dodging Reaper and Quarrel and Mizzen, trying to get to Jessup so that we could run underground.
So Coral comes in, Trident, right, go back this way, and then again, and then forward fall.
Yeah, and then chase her all the way back. So when you scramble back, tell me how you scramble back here. When
Yeah,
you
I was, and then I was standing up.
I was stuck on another shoot in London and I missed the 6 weeks of stunt rehearsal that everybody did. And I came in on the first day doing this bloodbath scene that everybody had rehearsed, and everyone was so patient with me. And, you know, Mackenzie had her whole Trident choreography down, and she took the time with me to, you know, teach me where I should go and what's easier for her and what's easier for me. And it all just became such a beautiful collaboration with all of those young kids, all of our stunt people, and our stunt coordinator, Scott and Steve, who were just so patient with me because I desperately needed that patience.
Yeah, I mean, it was super fun. I mean, when I first, because I had to, the main thing we worked on was like the fall, because I had to like fall backwards like 15 feet. And at first I was like pretty scared when we rehearsed it in Berlin. I was like, all right, I guess we're doing this. But I mean, I did it a bunch of times and they made sure I was feeling good and safe. And so by the time we got to set, like, it was pretty easy. I just rehearsed it a couple times and then it turned out well, so we'll see.
Okay, guys, here we go. And 3, 2, 1, go. Hopefully you'll do it with better acting than my stunt people. This is all about your face. Make contact with it. That's it. Okay? So you're never going to be supported. This is always you doing your thing, and you just have the wires to say it. Okay?
Well, we practiced for like 2 weeks back in Berlin. And, you know, I'm always safe in a harness, so it's like, for me, that's not a problem. Height is not a fear of mine, so it was actually very fun. I actually fell off a couple times in practice, but yeah, so just like practicing the fight up there.
I wish I was on a harness, but yeah, nothing like going up there with a harness. And then we've got a few more pieces to do, which is just, you know, chasing Lucy. We've got a drone attack that's going to be happening behind you guys. Hey, Crow, do you mind if I take this one?
Not a chance.
Go! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That goes back to what every kid thinks about as being a stuntman.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. And 3, 2, 1, go!
Is like get knocked down the cliff and roll down the hill sort of thing. So it was really, when we visualize it, and I was talking to the art department when they showed me some of their drawings, you know, I tweaked a couple things to get the right angle to the slope and all that. And then we built the slope out of foam, basically. Not so much rubber, but a soft foam that's got like a latex paint on it. So there's a give to it. It's not concrete sort of thing. It's forgiving enough that if you did whack your head on it, you weren't going to get a concussion or something like that. The biggest risk was getting somebody's foot in the back of your head or something as you're rolling over.
Good.
The Hunger Games has always been one of my favorite projects that I'd worked on, and when I heard that Francis had the opportunity to do it again, I was really happy to hear that he took it. Just diving back into that world of Pan Am, and I always knew there was such a rich history that was unexplored. So when I read that it was a prequel, I assumed it was going to be about the start of the games. I didn't know it was going to be focused on snow. And so as soon as I heard that, then it became even more interesting.
Working with Mark has been great. The first time I worked with him was when we were doing the Mockingjay movies. He intuits, I think, the way that I think the scene should play out, and so, you know, we seem to be in sync that way right up front.
He's trusting my selections, my performance selections, and my timing, and my coverage. That's already half the battle.
Because what I could do is hold on this, extend this tail.
They said I might find you out here.
It's also faster. And then have her look like down like that.
Yeah.
And then cut around to her.
Yeah, ooh, nice. And then you're out.
Still got one.
One of the real joys as an editor is seeing those first dailies coming in, you know, every day in my Avid, because you have an idea in your head, like anybody might, what it's going to look like, but seeing the coverage and seeing how the costumes or the production design and certainly how Yo shot it, it's always the most fun part.
What you could try to do that would actually really shorten it is what if it went straight into the help me
right away.
So it hits him, and then there's a beat, and he says, "Help me," and then he looks up, and then you see her coming through the smoke, as opposed to the scream.
The most challenging thing in this film was the pure scope, I think. You know, there's a lot of material in there, and having to bring it down. Francis always said, we're going to have to really find the real story here and focus. And then, because of the three parts, part one being the mentor, part two being the prize, part three being the peacekeeper, not linger on one part too long or make it feel like you don't want another part.
You want to see this explosion?
Yeah.
Please. Cornelius, please don't let me down here tomorrow.
I think the games we knew were going to come down even more proportionally because as fun as they are and as exciting as they are, it's just the games and it's the story stuff that you really want to hold on to. Francis was intent. He's like, let's tell this as efficiently as we can.
Do you think they're done?
I wonder if we need the reverse of him in the beginning, where he's like here, or if you just go from this to cut this out to here. So it's like the screen.
Do you think they're done?
And you get that.
This film, of everything I've worked on, it feels like it's the most streamlined. As every frame, every shot has a purpose, and it's amazing how many times we had to go through it. Just start at the beginning and make another pass and say, do we really need that? Do we really need that? And taking it out and realize we didn't need it. You know, it's a long book. I think it's the longest of the books. And it was a little daunting at first because it was even a long script. In a way, they are three different movies. That was one thing about the cutting the movie that we realized when we started showing people is that when you're reading the book and you get to the end of part two, you know you have a whole other chapter sitting in your hands. But
having James come back was never really a question for us. His music is so integral and so utterly identified with this series. It's impossible for me to imagine a version of these movies that isn't his score. They're completing the experience of the scene.
Well, Hunger Games have been a part of my life now for a long time, and they are wonderful musical opportunities. You know, I love working with Francis, so that combination is hard to beat. I think originally we had a mandate to keep the score in the spirit and the feelings of all the Hunger Games movies that came before, but what I discovered soon was that this is an entirely new set of characters. There's a different sensibility to this movie than the others. I just found it very easy to write to this movie, but in a very distinctive way.
Honestly, scoring is one of my favorite parts, if not my favorite part, about making a film. And I think part of it's working with James. He's so in control. We've worked through everything, so it's a very relaxed time for me, and it's really fun to get to see sort of all the musicians like bring all of this music to life.
one of the mandates was no electronics, which was huge difference. It had to be created within the orchestra, so that required a different challenge for me in terms of orchestration. Winds, who are playing just a tiny bit less, please, at 23.
That's first clarinet, first oboe.
Okay, and let's not let it get quite so loud at 29.
It was really fun to sort of explore with him a new sound for the Hunger Games, right? That there's going to be some familiar elements, some slightly familiar thematic material, but really we wanted to come up with a different sound. And a lot of that is sort of based on the kind of period element of the movie itself, and that it takes place 65 years before the original movies, and us wanting the music to reflect that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think there are several main themes that we've reinvented and figured out a way to integrate into the story without using any that were directly and powerfully attached, for instance, to Katniss. Tried to stay away from Katniss's theme. There's a resonant Hunger Games bit of the score, which I think people will enjoy because I think they're touchstones. Hanging Tree is back in a completely different kind of iteration and treatment, but I think the familiarity of that will be really welcome to people, and it'll be kind of just comforting in a way.
And so I think the approach has been slightly, changed for James and I. And I think one of the things we wanted to do was go a little more classical, and I'd say a little more raw, so that it just has, the music has a slightly more aged feel to it. An added element that happens quite often when I work with James is he'll bring in these really super talented musicians. And this time he brought in the pianist Yu Zhuang, who's a phenomenal player. And so it was really amazing to watch her work and have her play some of the music in the film. But what I really love about it is that sometimes James will get these ideas, and he had an idea to bring her in to do piano for the movie very early. And I think partially the idea of bringing her in started to change the way he thought about the music in the movie. There's a lot more piano in this score than there ever has been in any of the other Hunger Games. And so it's really just interesting to see when you bring somebody that talented in, how it actually starts to inform the music itself.
I've long been a huge fan of Yu Zhuang, along with millions of other people. And once I knew she was on board, I started writing different kinds of piano parts. And I think what it did is give us a really interesting entree and expression of the score, which we wouldn't have had before. That a lot of these dramatic or very tense moments, we did piano. We used piano in a more elaborate way than I ever would have before. And I think it really became a very important voice in the score. It was moving just to watch her all day, but then the orchestra left, and I had written 3 solo piano suites for her based on 3 of the main themes of the Hunger Games. And I just came out here and sat sort of next to the piano and, looked around me at this incredible room, and Yu Zhuang was playing my little suites back to me, for me, in that one room by myself. And yeah, I just kind of lost it. It was just so great. express how it's the high point of my career.
What James did, which I thought was really fun, was he wrote these suites based on classic Hunger Games themes. You know, a Katniss theme, a Ruse theme, and had her do her version of those themes for soundtrack, which they were just incredible to listen to.
I think we're good.
We have it, yeah. Cool. I think we're done.
That's a wrap.
You know, this experience has been fantastic, I have to say, you know, because I wanted to go back. I really loved the book. I loved the series. I loved, you know, working with Nina, working with Suzanne, and was sort of happy to go back in the world. But I have to say that in the beginning, you know, there were nerves, right? That this is, not that it's not an interesting story, but just nerves of like, are people interested in a Hunger Games movie without Katniss? Just that kind of basic question. And so that was sort of always at the back of my head, but you know, I had faith in the story, and it was a story that I wanted to help tell, and I was really excited about the world building possibilities, and excited about sort of starting, you know, with a blank canvas cast-wise.
As someone who was a fan of the original movies, I think this one has, in a way, even more scope, because it begins in the Capitol. It begins with these young people who are the future politicians and the future people that we see later in the movies, in my case. And we get to see them kind of working their way through the Capitol post-war, and then we see them move into the districts, we see them move out of the districts, beyond the districts. I think audiences will be very...
They have it, and it's just like there, and it's so cool to see it.
I remember the first day I went into a soundstage at Babelsberg, and I was watching Scott Attia, my stunt coordinator. He had all the actors that were the tributes stand in the circle and do the countdown, and the games were beginning, and I was like, all right, we're back. It was exciting, like we're back in the games. But then when we got into the arena, and I saw how the arena just like looked when it was dressed, and how the tributes all looked not in uniforms and in their own clothing, and the grittiness and the dirtiness of it all, and the feeling. I was like, wow, this feels like a Hunger Games movie, but it feels unique. It feels fresh. It feels like a proper standalone Hunger Games film with its own unique qualities. And I found that really exciting.
What is exciting right now for us too is that Suzanne, who obviously has been integrally involved from the moment she entrusted me with her books, she's seen the finished movie now and is so pleased with it, so proud of it, feels such connection to it as a rightful adaptation of her work. That is what makes me feel excited and proud now, to know that we did right by her. And the hope that by doing right by her, we do right by all of the fans of the Hunger Games, whether they are fans of the original movies, or whether they came to the original movies later, or whether they may even go see this movie first, and then decide they're curious to see the other movies if they haven't already. I'm incredibly excited for that. Anytime anybody, honestly, at this point, new has seen the movie, I get all excited and want to hear what they think. So the idea that God willing, millions of people will get to go see the movie and say what they think is, yes, beyond exciting for me.